Well, good morning, everybody. One of the big stories across the middle part of the country is our first kind of cold front that we've seen so far this late summer into early fall. It's dropped temperatures off significantly. They're not going to stay that way, but at least it brought in like a taste of some fall weather, plus some precipitation. The radar animation you're watching here shows a couple of neat things. First of all, we did finally see rain in West Virginia, parts of Ohio, getting into Pennsylvania and into the Northeast, one of our drier sectors of the country. Behind this, high pressure settled in pretty quickly, and watch the inversion build quickly. There it is. See that? That inversion building as the sun sets is seen in the radar data by ducting the beam. In other words, it prevents the radar beam from going out and up, as the Earth curves away, and instead kind of keeps it, because of the change in the vertical index of refraction, all right, the beam instead gets kind of pushed back toward the surface of the Earth. And as a result, it sees a whole lot more boundary layer features, and that's why you get all of this. There's some Bragg scattering in here. There's also all sorts of non-meteorological targets. That's what's going on with the flash that you see in this area. But the rain that got into this area was desperately needed, and I'm going to show you something. We were worried about this leapfrog effect, right? Right in through there. That was kind of the region we were concerned about, and it certainly did. Well, the models at least had it down. But to the north and south of that region, very heavy rainfall came in here in the last couple of days, really mostly yesterday. And I got to drive into some of this on my way up to a meeting in Chicago, and it just absolutely poured the rain in that area. But take a look down here along the Ohio River, then getting into Ohio, West Virginia. In fact, let's just zoom in on that area real quick here. And we can see, there's some heavy rainfall and some flooding problems that happened here. So what a wild swing this region had throughout this year, right? We had the tremendous flooding in spring, the bone dry mid to late summer into early fall, and now we've gone back and added 4 to 5 inches of rain across this corridor. So just wanted to point that out just as an observation of this recent system. Then the temperatures continue to cool behind this. Compared to yesterday, we're 10 to 20, 25 degrees cooler than we were yesterday at this time across the area that front's coming through. But notice the rebound that's already occurring on the back side of this. If you have a look at the surface winds or the near surface winds, there's the area of high pressure. There's the main frontal boundary early this morning, and this is the resurgence of southerly winds already behind this system. But a lot of attention is going to be paid to, I think, 4 events. It's kind of neat to say that, but there is a trough that's going to develop on the downside, downwind side of this ridge. And that's going to be critical to watch it set up right in this region. That's going to influence Priscilla, and then what follows it. There's another system down here that's expected to develop. And we're going to see if both of those systems get pushed into the southwestern United States. We have Jerry as well that needs to be discussed. But we're going to just do that for a moment because the forecast of Tropical Storm Jerry is to stay out to open ocean. We are still dealing with our eastward displaced Bermuda High. So a lot of the activity is going to be here in the East Pacific in terms of delivering moisture to North America. That's going to be the story. So look what happens by the time we get out there to the 11th, okay? This is the cutoff low I mentioned, and it's pretty deep, and it's got quite a bit of flow to it. There's a ridge that's sitting over Texas, keeping Texas, especially central and eastern Texas, very, very dry. And what this is doing is this is taking the remnant moisture from Priscilla and starting to put it there while we watch another system form and move its way toward the north. And that's what's going to really, I think, do its best to start to revive moisture across the southwest. Now, if you watch Priscilla, okay, let's just get an idea here, just over the next couple of days. We're out there on the 10th. So remember, this system goes through first. It's the next system down here that's going to follow this that we're going to keep an eye on. But it's already making that turn simply due to the dynamical flow around a big cutoff low and a ridge. It's just got to squeeze right in between those two. So Priscilla's in first, and then we're going to watch the moisture from the next system come through. Now, to see the moisture, I want to show you the European model precipitable water forecast. So again, the higher the value here, the more moisture there's in the atmosphere to rain out. And we can see Priscilla moving and its moisture getting into Southern California, into this side of Mexico, the Baja, and into Arizona as well, just as we work our way toward the end of the week. And then this is the second surge of moisture from the second system. And that second surge comes in and also works its way into this same area. Now, meanwhile, as we get out there toward the end of the week, there's going to be a feature coming through the northern plains that we're going to have to watch interact with something setting up along the East Coast. And that's going to set up a very, very potent system. I think it's going to run up the coast. In fact, I want to show it to you. Let's flip over to precipitation type and intensity here. So front clears. There we go. That's by Thursday. We're going to see high pressure dominate. That's the cooler weather we're anticipating. There's high pressure reforming here. And as a result, you can kind of see we've got this flow like this and this flow like this. And in between, there's a bit of a battle going on. But the moisture from Priscilla, all right, is kind of coming out like this by the time we work our way late in the week. And Priscilla dies, but the moisture gets into the four corner states while deeper lows live off the coast of California. That's kind of what we just saw in the upper level flow. And then you see the next surge of moisture coming in here from this next tropical system. But at that moment, as this starts to move north, there will be a much, much deeper wave of low pressure coming in. And we're going to talk about snow in the Rocky Mountains for a moment here. But take a look what's going on the East Coast. Remember earlier in the week, we keep focusing on this vorticity maximum that sets up along the East Coast. By the time we get into, let's just take this back one notch. This is the day on Saturday. There you go. That's Saturday morning, getting through the middle of the day on Saturday and into Sunday. Look at the deep low that's rolling through the East Coast here. And it's an interaction between this also very large low that's getting up into parts of Manitoba and the vorticity maximum associated with that and the high pressure to its north. So what we will be watching is how much of an influence does this high pressure have on maybe influencing this system a little bit closer to shore. That's like a classic North Atlantic oscillation negative phase type thing, which we would need to be watching for all winter, because in winter, this sucker is producing snow right here, big time snows. And that's going to be interesting. But as it stands, where's the big snow right now? It's with the cold in the west. Look at Sunday's Rocky Mountain snow. We then work our way into Monday, Cascades, deeper low coming through there. And then take a look at that. The European model really wants to go after snow in the Sierra Nevada by the time we get out of a week from now, next Tuesday and Wednesday. We're going to see how much snow we can get out of that system too, as it pulls along the coast and makes a sharp turn here. Now, if you notice, we're talking about something different. Like we've been talking about stagnant ridges for months, it feels like. And now we're out of that conversation. So let's kind of get into the total precipitation side of this, and we'll look at snow in a few moments. So good. We're still watching moisture move through the northeast this morning. Need every drop of that. Here comes Priscilla. There's Priscilla's preceding moisture getting into parts of Arizona, the other four corner states as well. There's our deeper low. Now, as we go toward Saturday into Sunday, you got to watch three spots. There's 1, 2, and 3. And so this is starting off Saturday evening, going into Sunday morning. The European model putting down quite a bit of precipitation in those three focal point areas. If I just take it out, let's just take it out here a little bit farther. There's 198 hours in the forecast. That gets us to next Thursday morning. And we can see the effect of these deeper lows coming into the west, ejecting Priscilla's moisture here, and then the feature running up the East Coast and how much rainfall it's expecting to deliver to some very, very dry areas. Now, speaking of very dry areas, this region in part of the Midwest is left out of this entirely, as are pockets of the western and high plains. And this is an area that has been dealing with building drought for a while. And it's not just the European model that looks like this. This is the GFS out at the same time. Notice how the European is a wetter model right now than the GFS overall. There are a few pockets where the GFS is wetter, like here, but overall the European is wetter. If we look at the probabilities, this is the chance of getting over an inch just in the next 7 days. So a lot of this region throughout Arizona, the rest of the four corner states, looking very, very wet. There's Priscilla's moisture and then the follow-up system. Notice Northern California, the Sierra Nevada, getting up into the Cascades, the Willamette Valley. These areas really getting hit. And now we've seen an increased chance across parts of Montana. If you remember earlier in the week, we talked about how northern Montana has been so very dry. Now, elsewhere around the country, let's just flip this over. I bet I get a new model run in. Oh, I didn't yet. Good, I beat it. What you can see here is very dry conditions are maintained. This is the chance of staying under 1/10 of an inch through the next 7 days here. A very, very dry pocket that still continues to plague this part of the southern plains into the delta. All right. Okay, snow. I mentioned it. Let's go see what the European model is putting down. That's through Sunday into Monday. It's next week when that deep low really just gets established. I can't wait to show it to you in a second. That we start to see the models aggressively going after, 18 to 24 inches of snow in the Sierra Nevada through pockets of the Cascades. It's a 10-day snowfall forecast, but it clearly is showing there's depth in this trough that's going to have the potential for dropping down enough cool air to make snow. And this is what it looks like. Now, you know that we've had this conversation about the omega looking pattern and the ability to draw troughs toward the west from the east. And you can see it right there. Okay, that's a cutoff low by Friday. That is what's helping what's left of Priscilla and then the next system to get in. As we play it forward, we get out to this Saturday and Sunday, and now look what we've got. Another trough working its way this direction because of the sheer size of this ridge. Here's our ridge in the northeast, which is helping the low hug the coast that we're talking about this weekend and early next week. But that trough, that is a monstrous trough that just lives off the coast. It's got cold air in it, and it's certainly going to be enough to produce those snows at higher elevation. Meanwhile, with this pattern, big warm-up happening back in the middle part of the United States. I'll show you those temperatures in just a few moments. So as we take a look out there, we're just curious if this pattern opens up and moves. And what we find is that about 10 days from now, there are two troughs that kind of hug the northeast and northwest corners of the United States with ridging in between. It is different. It's something different about the pattern, but it's not yet a full breakdown to a massive gain in momentum to just start, just doing this, just ripping systems across the United States, which could happen later in the month of October, as we continue to get through it here. So what you end up getting out of the models is the next 7 days looks like this compared to average. All right, so we've detailed out these 3 areas to watch. Let's take it out 10 days. You notice how much drier this region stays for about 10 days. And even into week 2, that area is drier. But with the trough coming in and the trough off the northeast coast, you can find these wetter regions when you look closely at week 2. But putting all 14 days together, we have a significant problem brewing here. And we're going to do drought monitor tomorrow, and we're going to continue to see drought expansion from Texas to the Delta and the Mid-South as this region continues to get drier and drier. Okay, temperature-wise, we had a freeze and frost issues going across the northern tier of the United States all the way over to parts of the Appalachian Mountains. So following that rain, we got some pretty chilly conditions that are here in parts of the east, and also take note of what's going on in the Snake River Valley. If we look at our frost potential for the next 7 days, this is put out by the National Digital Forecast Database. Everywhere in gray is where we're anticipating a low temperature getting down below 35. And just take note of what's going on right here, getting into Indiana and Ohio. This would be right about climatologically accurate, but let's take a look at the timing, because a normal frost in this area is around October 17th through the 20th would be about the normal time here. Michigan, your frost dates are very odd because of the lake. So the closer you get to the lake, the more the effect of the lake is to keep it warmer. But central lower Michigan has earlier first frost dates. So here's the low temperatures this morning. This is tomorrow morning. You can see that cold air getting in here on Thursday. But as I mentioned, that moves into the northeast. Watch the massive resurgence of warmth behind this by the weekend. That's Saturday into Sunday. We're back up to where our low temperatures are, 25 to 30 degrees warmer than average. And then we get out here to Monday and Tuesday, and that warmth continues to spread. Max temperature-wise, here's today's max temperatures predicted by the National Digital Forecast Database. Sorry, that's Thursday into Friday. Look at the cold coming into the west. Watch the west. Ready? This is Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Major cool down. Troughs, you saw them just living off the coast. This is where we're going to be watching for the beginning of the chances for snow. Meanwhile, we jump back up into the 80s in Missouri and Illinois, and possibly into the 90s down in Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, and Oklahoma. Very, very warm. And that's how things shape up by next Tuesday. So big resurgence of warmth coming back into this region. Now, if we look at on agweather.com, the matrix of temperatures here, take note that the European ensemble has got a cooler look through this region, day 10 through 15, and so does the European. Now, the AI doesn't. Okay, see, it's got another buildup of warmth, but most of the model forecasts for the next 10 days look very similar. Okay, stack them up, and you start to see the rebuilding of quite a bit of cold air here, which is going to be supportive of some of those mountain snows in the Rockies, right? So we need that to see that kind of thing evolve. All right, with all that being said, we look out there and we're trying to identify something different. And I mentioned we've got this pattern that's favoring, just more troughs. We seem to be building them, but I found it very interesting to look at the spacing of these 3 troughs, actually these 4. Notice how they're all about equidistant from one another. And I'm starting to just try to understand, is the atmosphere beginning to pick up some momentum? So I went out there again to next Thursday and just wanted to have a look at the jet stream, because you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's those troughs. We're still a bit blocked up. We're still a bit blocked up here. See that? That more north-south flow? But this is what's beginning to catch my attention. This buildup of more zonal, more, basically better flow. And we've talked about this, right? We went out there and said, hey, look, we see that our momentum is being forecast to come out of the basement and start to regain. That means more westerly zonal flow overall if we return back toward average. Whereas if your momentum is lower than normal, what we're talking about here is the atmosphere wanting to break itself up into more ridges. We also been looking at this, right, Matt? I've been talking about how the global wind oscillation is coming back up closer to that zero line, representing more, just normal early fall flow in the atmosphere. The results of it is that with the jet picking up momentum across the Pacific first, take a look at this whole region here in the North Pacific getting into the Gulf of Alaska. Look at the now, through most of November, the change in this area, which had been forecast dry, to now look at near normal precipitation, even wetter than normal around the Great Lakes. And this region to the south in Texas, which had been forecast, we know that's very dry now, we're even starting to see that break down. And the hope is that November, like I presented to you on Monday and last Friday, that we're going to see something similar in a pattern shift like we saw in 2024. And again, 2024 is still an analog we have to consider going forward into this forecast of 2025 into 2026. Now, Matt and I will continue to build on that narrative throughout this next week and time beyond that. But first, I just want to show you this. Okay, what's going on with our La Nina? Not a whole lot of change in these ocean temperatures as of late. They look pretty similar. But if we continue to build better flow through the North Pacific, these cooler areas are going to continue to show up. And the more they show up, the better the chances are of dropping the jet farther to the south. I mean, that's what we're going to be looking for. And I'm just curious if any of the models are picking up on that in the long term, and how much are they weighing the La Nina against that? Because normally with a La Nina, you tend to get the jet come over the top and dive like this. But some years with La Ninas, you get an active jet that comes into the west. They all have different flavors. So this one's flavor is likely going to be relatively weak. What would be a moderate La Nina? If it could just dip down here below -1, what would be a strong, like -2? I mean, that'd be a huge La Nina, but we're not there. We're somewhere in this vicinity of, -0.8. And nearly every model favors kind of a cessation of the La Nina's development. It'll still linger, but its development, before Jan 1, and then quickly collapsing after that. Now, that's going to be important for 2026. But because of that, the models are looking something like this. Let's shrink this up so you can see them all. There you go. The National Multi-Model Ensemble was just released, and I want to make sure you know what we do with this. We have these 7 models that go into the National Multi-Model Ensemble. They're just run at different centers across North America. A couple of them are Canadian, but what we do is we make a blend of them, which you can see up here in the upper left, and we also look at the probabilities, right? So let's just do this. Don't let the color bar persuade you of something that isn't there. It's pretty aggressive, right? So when you see this, you're like, oh my gosh, it's never going to rain again. No. This is just looking at precipitation rates from November, December, January, and the color bar is designed to stand out. All right. So are we concerned about this region not receiving much precipitation as we go into fall? Yes. Is that consistent with La Nina? Yeah, it is. What about beyond that? Let's go have a look here. This is the December, January, February. Just like the European attempts to just break drought in winter across this area, we continue to see it now showing up in the National Multi-Model Ensemble. What I want to know is this versus this. Now, what I'm saying here is if we end up getting a Pacific high that lives here, then yep, the jet comes over the top and leaves through the Ohio Valley. I'm not sure that this is baked into the models properly. And what I mean by that is I think that if you continue to cool down the North Pacific, this probably shifts over and we get better flow coming into California this winter, which means this region will not be dry either. Now, that's just my prediction based purely on the fact that I don't know that the models are maybe handling the change in momentum that's expected here in the month of November. All right. Let's go from there into the next setup. So this is January, February, March. And let's go beyond that. This model keeps going. Let's go out to February, March, April. Now remember, winter can have a drought broken if you're south of about that line. And how, well, I'm not going to include the west. The west is when the wind drought is broken in the west. So let's talk about this east of the Rocky Mountains and south of that line. South of that line. Now the reason I say that is because in this region, you have an active freeze-thaw cycle, meaning that moisture that gets into the ground either via snow or rain can soak in. To the north of that, we typically freeze our soils up all the way into the northeast. And therefore, you can't break a drought until spring snowmelt or spring rains. And we're going to hope for some good snows this winter across the north. Okay, that's February, March, April. Let's keep going. This is March, April, May. And out there, we're pretty far out, so we're just looking at it for the sake of looking at it. But what you notice is over the next 6 months, it's got this region and this region pretty wet while it keeps these two pockets drier here and all the way into the southeast. Now, that's just a model run. We just consider it. We know that this same model also predicted mega drought in the Midwest this summer, which didn't happen. I'm talking about like in June and July. So I'll just take a deep breath there and remind you that that's what's going on here. To finish this up, I do want to give you a quick update on South America. We've not yet seen a true revival of monsoonal storms here throughout the Cerrado, but they are running the periphery of this. And there's a stalled out frontal boundary right in through this area. So we're looking here at satellite estimated rainfall. But if we look at the models, they couldn't be more different. That's the next 7 days in the European. We're watching the Antarctic Oscillation drop. You go out there to day 8 through 14, it stays wet. So you say, just show me the next 14 days. And it sure enough has a wet corridor through here with the driest spots over, by Bahia, the Tocantins, parts of Goiás, Minas Gerais. We could be just drier in those areas, but the overall wetter here, which is going to be exactly what is needed for the planting of the soybeans. Now, as I mentioned, the models differ though. That's the GFS solution. It's bone dry in this area. It's wetter down here, Sao Paulo, Paraná. And so I don't know what the GFS is doing that is so much different than the European model. I mean, you can find the subtleties when you look at the model data, but what's going on with the initialization that it's missing some of these rains, and we need to see which model wins out. Because if the European wins out in this case, this is a major, major plus for Brazilian farmers. And we just need to keep an eye on it. Okay, that's all I got to share with you today. We'll talk again tomorrow. Thanks.